everybody, it's Terry. Welcome back to my kitchen, and I'm here on behalf of the town of Aurora to run through a few Arctic adventures in the kitchen. We're going to do some soups, some stews, some sides like an exotic gourmet grilled cheese or some biscuits. Something easy and quick, because today I know we're all running around with the kids home. We got very little time, so these are my 4 quick and easy soups and stews for you to try. So first off, we're going to go with our seafood chowder. Now this is a really easy chowder, and although the recipe on the website will have measurements, feel free to play. I use a combination of whatever seafood is on sale. When I was in the grocery store today, cod was on sale, salmon, and I got a couple of scallops as a treat. The shrimp that I add, actually at the grocery store, they had pre-seasoned shrimp with just an herb seasoning that was less expensive than buying a bag of frozen shrimp. So I grabbed a couple of skewers, chopped them up, that's great, and a can of clams. But to start with, we've got our leeks going. So let's take a look down here, and I like leeks. If you don't like leeks, use onions, it's totally fine. I've sauteed the leeks with a little bit of salt in olive oil until they become translucent. And again, I said translucent was really when they start to look like they're not as bright in color, not as white, and they start to wilt or cry as they call it. Now this seafood chowder I make for my kids all the time. I make it really fast. In fact, this soup is ready so quickly that you need to be prepared to serve it as soon as it's done, because it really takes no time at all, and I take a ton of shortcuts. This version will be done pescatarian, so if you want to use fish stock, use fish stock. If you want to use vegetable stock, use vegetable stock. I'm using chicken stock because it's what I have. The other thing is when I normally make this, I saute about 4 pieces of bacon, then take the bacon out and use the bacon fat to saute the leeks. Again, for pescatarians who only eat the fish and don't want any hint of meat, leave the bacon out. It's no big deal. So, as these are sauteing, we're now going to add the potatoes. I am not about to sit here and peel and dice little potatoes or big potatoes. Frankly, I don't have that kind of time. So I buy the frozen hash brown cubes. So they look like this, and I love them. Keep a bag in the freezer. I don't measure. I add half a bag. So my recipe here that I'm cooking for, I have 3 very large grown men for children. When they were all home and it was football season, I would do a pot twice this. So I'd probably use a whole bag of everything. But right now, it's just me at home and my trusty cameraman, who's my son, who's videotaping this on my behalf, who's going to have this. So I've sort of cut it in half. But once you start to play with the ratios and do what you want, you really won't need a recipe anymore. The fish, up to you. The bacon, no bacon, up to you. The potatoes, by all means, if you want to cut your own, go right ahead. If you have leftover roast potatoes from a night before, chop those up and use those. Totally no problem. So we're just sort of running this around in the oil to get it coated until it starts to thaw. The nice thing about these is they really take no time at all. To that, I'm going to add frozen corn, really frozen corn that has managed to stick to my measuring cup. About 2 cups or so. Kids don't like corn, leave it out. You want to add peas and carrots, add them. You want to add a different type of vegetable, doesn't matter. What I like about the corn is it adds a bit of sweetness to the chowder. Again, we're going to wait, and I'm turning my heat up. It's been at medium while I saute, but I've now turned it up because I'm going to add the broth. Before I do that, I want to season. These are potatoes. They take a lot of seasoning. A good 3 to 4 pinch of salt. I did the same for the leeks. Saute, stir it around. Every time you add an ingredient, add a little bit more salt. If a recipe says a teaspoon of salt, take that teaspoon out ahead of time. Use it in pieces at each stage of your recipe. If you dump it in at the end, when a lot of recipes tell you to, then you miss the opportunity to season each vegetable or each addition. So now in goes the stock. And while I let this come to a boil and simmer for 10 minutes, we'll be right back when it comes up. My soup came back up to boil and I added the cod that I had. It was still a little bit frozen, so it immediately lowered the temperature and now it's coming back to boil. I just wanted the cod to get a head start because it was frozen. And now the next part goes really quickly. So in goes whatever the rest of your fish is. Again, as much or as little as you think you want. Push it down. Give it a few minutes to start cooking. Your shrimp literally takes a minute. Your clams literally just need to be warmed. And then we have a little bit of clam broth, which I love to add. And so rather than do some more dishes, I add a little bit of the liquor in the can of clams. And I'm not sure if you can see, but you have to be very careful because there's usually a lot of sand and grit in the bottom of a can of clams. So I drained it through a sieve and then I'm trickling it in, trying not to disturb what could be at the bottom, and I don't want it all. So whatever's left will stay there. Stir it up. Give it a taste for seasoning at this point in time. I'm adding some pepper. I like white pepper with this because it's a white soup. It doesn't look like I've got little black foreign whatever's in the soup. So white pepper. If you do decide to use white pepper and you've never used it before, just take note that white pepper is a little bit stronger than the regular black pepper that we would do. Okay, I can see that the salmon has cooked. So in goes the shrimp. I have some chopped chives, which I'm adding, optional. And in go the clams. So, last thing I'm going to add is some half and half. Now we're going to simmer that away. Hopefully you can see, but what I have here is dill, fresh dill. My kids love it. Optional, leave it out. You don't like dill? Use parsley. You don't like parsley? Don't use anything. Taste as you go. But what I did is I just rip off a big chunk of dill and I'm going to put my hand on the blade and just move everything but the tip that's here, because that's going to make sure I don't cut myself. Hand on the handle, thumb underneath, hand on top, and just up and down, back and forth. And this is going to go in at the very end. Again, you don't like dill? Don't add it. My kids do. They're really big fans of dill. So now all we're going to do is give this a minute to continue to cook, sprinkle the dill, and then I'll be back to show you the finished product in a second. Okay, it's been about 3 or 4 minutes. Keep it at a low simmer. Whenever you add dairy into soup, like half and half, don't let it come to a rolling boil, because what will happen is that it will separate and it'll look like cottage cheese. So I gave it a brief test for taste, and it actually needs a little bit more salt. That will totally depend on what you're using for a broth. Okay? And feel free to buy the Tetris box or the powder and mix it with water, or even your homemade stock, totally up to you. You really want to go gung-ho when you peel your shrimp. Put all your shrimp shells in a pot, cover them with water, add the green part of a leek, a couple of peppercorns, and let it simmer for about 20 minutes. Strain it, and you have shrimp stock. Easy as anything. So this is now done. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to add all this fresh dill. If you're using dry dill, put it in when you add the first bit of stock so that it can soften and go. Same with chives if you're using dry chives. And that's it. There's your seafood chowder. The whole total thing, approximately 25 to 30 minutes. Enjoy.